This talk is framed from a blog post that I wrote a while ago, speaking predominantly to young men. But I knew the audience today would be both men and women, so we're going to try to open it up a little bit wider, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Now, the topic is performing love. And I want us to recognize that if expectations are the mother of disappointment, then the culture has fed us individualism since we were in the cradle. And I'm starting with that because when we think about performing love, we think about love in general, we have to recognize that we've grown up in a world where the primary focus of who we are and what we do and how we show up has always been centered not around you, but around me. And the problem in that frame, in that paradigm, is that there is no love without another person. We're talking about relationships here. There is no way for us to be together in some sort of relationship if I don't recognize the other person who's there with me. There's no way that I can think about how this is good for even us as a collective if I don't recognize that you also have needs that you're bringing as you show up in this relationship. And so we have to recognize that this individualism that we have grown up in imbibing since before we were born, since we were extremely little, has seeped into our psyche. It has shaped and formed how it is that we think about the world and everything around it. These unexamined expectations that we have of what a relationship is, of who people should be, has then set expectations and that we have for each other, but is also shaped and formed entitlement that showers or coats how it is that we view others. I'm thinking about me, and what I think about you is that you need to understand what my needs are. You need to show up for me because I am due this thing. And there are many problems that happen in relationships. Relationships don't happen in a vacuum. But when we have this disappointment that grows, this resentment that grows in how it is that we see others because the other person doesn't read our mind, because we don't know how to get our needs fulfilled, well then now I'm disappointed in the other person who's in this relationship with me. And with that, it leads to disappointment in not only the other person, but a'udhu billah, we seek refuge in Allah, perhaps even in God. Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow me to be in a relationship like this? Why is it that said person isn't fulfilling my needs? Or worse, why don't I feel happy in this relationship? Now, we have to understand that performance is very different than principles. In the early stages of a relationship, we have to understand that early intensity that we feel, those feelings, whether we call it puppy love or we call it bubblies or whatever it is that we're feeling, aren't something that necessarily sustains a relationship long term. It isn't something that will help us necessarily feel good because those feelings aren't things that we're rooting in how it is and what it is that's mandating or dictating rather how it is that we interact with each other. What are the things that set how it is that we think about each other and show up for each other? That intensity that we're feeling, if we don't back it behind something, if it's not rooted in something deeper, then it becomes like foam on the sea that is easily swept away. And so we have to make sure that we recognize performing love is showing up in a way that we expect others to think we should show up. Performing love is to enact a way that is focused on the outcomes of that relationship. I'm trying to do what will ensure that you give me what I want. I'm doing the things that I hope will yield the results that make me happy. But that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it means that our intentions from the very beginning, from the foundation, have been slightly off. It's no longer about how is this relationship a means to earn the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it becomes, well, how can this relationship be something that merely makes me happy? Now, those two aren't mutually exclusive. I can try to ensure that I'm happy in that relationship. I can ensure that I'm not allowing abuse to happen. I can ensure that I'm being respected and getting what I need out of the relationship. But by recognizing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the goal, and this is a means to achieve that end, it shifts the entire dynamic. By recognizing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the goal, and I'm not performing, I'm not doing the things that I think are required, but doing the things that are principled and objectively required by the relationship and who the other person is. And so we have to then recognize that these principles reveal themselves through consistency, accountability, through showing up for another person. I say this all the time, particularly in marriage counseling, but consistency builds trust and trust builds love. Consistency builds trust and trust builds safety. We have to consistently show up, ensure that the words that we're saying are backed by actions. And if we do that enough, then the other person will begin to trust that what we say will be followed by actions. And if we do that consistently, then the other person, male or woman, will start to feel that this relationship is one of safety and is something that they will allow to be able to be themselves and be comfortable in that relationship. So particularly in the early stages, we have to make sure that we're not letting affection grow faster than clarity. We're making sure, particularly because I knew there was going to be a lot of single people here today, we have to make sure that in those early stages, how we're feeling, the intensity of emotions that come to heart, how we think about the other person, don't cloud the principles in what it is that I need. What are my non-negotiables? What are something that's good for me as an individual? Who is a person that's going to help me long-term be in a relationship where I don't have to perform, that I can be my authentic self, I can be who I am? They will know that, understand it, hopefully eventually be able to hold that reality. If it's good, encourage it, and if it's bad, help me to grow into the person that I need to be. We have to recognize that all of this requires sabr, it requires patience. That there is in relationships, if we're not performing and we're trying to be genuine and authentic in the relationship that we're in, that it's not always going to be the way that I want it to be. And anyway, ask the married people that are here, relationships are never always the way that you want them to be. But if I'm principled in doing the things that are required, I'm trying to engage in a form of altruistic sacrifice. I'm trying to engage in not just selfless sacrifice, altruistic sacrifice. That I'm showing up for the person that I claim that I love. I'm showing up in this relationship with the sake of altruism. I'm doing it for a higher purpose and sacrificing what I want for the short term, but considering the long-term benefits and goals that are needed. And if both of us are engaging in that, not just one way, but both of us are engaging in that, it creates a positive feedback loop where I sacrifice for you and you sacrifice for me. We both start to trust each other. We'll consistently show up for each other the way the other person needs. And now we start to feel safety in that relationship. That this person knows that you're going to show up and you know that they're going to show up. We have to recognize that over time, that the passion that we once felt goes through ebbs and flows. I don't want to say that it fades, but their life, like everything, goes through ebbs and flows. There are peaks and there are valleys. And if we're only looking for the intensity of a relationship, if we're only looking for that high that we feel, particularly in the beginning of a relationship, then that won't necessarily be the fuel that fuels us throughout the difficulties. That won't necessarily be the thing that allows us to keep going regardless of how we're feeling. That requires that we're being principled. That requires that we apologize and repair the mistakes that happen if and when we have mistakes that show up. That means that we recognize that when trauma happens, when life events happen, then we're shaken to our core. That I need to adjust for the person who has gone through said thing. But that's only done when we know someone. We're thinking not just about me, but about us. We have to recognize that this form of love only increases and builds upon each other. That if we can continue to show up for each other, that we can continue to try to love each other, not out of performing, but out of genuine principles, recognizing who that person is, recognizing what's going to help them get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, recognizing what's going to help them be the best version of themselves. And I'm separating them because, as we just heard from Dr. Kia, there's so many different isms that have separated how we even think about the world. Unfortunately, who we are as individuals and what we do for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been decoupled. But I digress. If we're continually doing what's going to help someone get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in the process become the best version of themselves, then inshallah we can continue to build upon that. With that, inshallah, we only grow deeper in our relationships. In closing, alhamdulillah, I've been able to serve in communities for almost 10 years now. In doing that, you begin to, or it's been more than 10 years. In doing that, you begin to see patterns. In relationships, you generally see the same patterns that happen on a timeline. I usually can see someone, they can tell me the problems they're having in their marriage, and I can say, you've been married for this many years. The first 1 to 3 years are the honeymoon phase. Everything is amazing. You're just getting used to being alone with a non-mahram person. Particularly for us that may have grown up in somewhat conservative households, it takes a year to recognize that you're just with someone. It takes 3 years to get comfortable just being you. A joke that I always tell is that I worked with a man who told me that for 15 years he never passed gas in front of his wife. I said, Habibi, those times have long gone. In those first 3 years, you may be fighting once a week, every other week. Very normal. So if you're in the first 3 years and you find yourself there, alhamdulillah, it's all good. After 3 to 5 years, you start to get comfortable. But in that 3 to 5 years, you shift from once a week to once a month relatively, and then you start to say, why am I even with this person? That's when the individualism really starts to seep in deep. You're like, what are we doing here? Around 5 years, particularly for Muslims, if you don't have children, that's when you say, I'm checking out. The performance can't last any longer. If you don't have kids, there's nothing to glue yourself together. I'm not saying have kids so you stay together. Please talk to me privately if that's what you're thinking about. Please, I'm not saying that. But that's just a pattern. At 7 years, you recognize that I'm a different person than I was 7 years ago. What I want out of the world, how I think about the world, how I show up in the world is incredibly different. And the person I am today no longer wants the person I married 7 years ago. Common pattern. Big traumatic event. If you can get through 7 years without performing, building that consistency, that trust and safety, understanding who the other person is, doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by 10 years, bi'idhnillah, it's off to the races. You're used to it. It goes from once a month, inshallah, quarterly, maybe every 6 months you have a big blow up. It's all good. You know how to make it work. 10 years on, you did the work, inshallah, khair wa barakah. If you don't do the work, you come back to me at 14 or 18 years, every time. If you don't do the work to learn who the person is, to stop performing, 15 years without passing gas, you stop performing, then if you don't do that, then at 14 or 18 years, you come back. Why am I sharing this? Regardless of where we find ourselves in that timeline, it doesn't actually benefit us in the long run to perform love. It doesn't actually benefit us. It makes things easy. It may feel good. It may get short-term results. But if we're thinking about reshaping our community, being married for a long period of time, bi'idhnillah ta'ala, 20, 50 years, then let's start being real with each other. Let's stop performing and try to center our relationships for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless everyone in their relationships. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us authentic with ourselves first and foremost, and then with our partners. Wa sallallahu alaihi wa sallam Muhammad wa ala sahbihi wa sallam ajma'in.